bids are in, the gavel is dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions, and just wine. My name is Jeff McGurn from the WineBid marketing team. With me, as always, is Paul Walker, the philosopher Polyak. He is our wine expert. And we're going to be talking today about everything that happened this week in auction. Welcome, Paul. Let's dive right into it.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do this. So let's talk about stuff that saw a lot of action this week. Items with lots of bids that had big movement. You know, interesting, we don't often see stuff from South America get a ton of action, but we did have 4 bottles of the 2018 Bodega Catena Zapata Malbec. And this one, 8 bids, took 4 of those from 55 to 63. So a little bit of growth in the market there. I myself have some of the Zapata.
You have the 18?
I don't know. I would have to look.
I think it got a really big score. So that's my guess as to why it got pushed out. Theorizing. Because it got a 98 Advocate score. Because we've sold interestingly, actually, we sold the 19 for more. Got a lower score, so go figure.
Oh, I do have the 18 actually. Go figure. I've got some 18. Number 2.
Yeah, that's not even that 60. Yeah, 50. What is it? 62,
63.
Something like that. 62, 63 bucks a piece. Not too bad.
That's not too bad at all, I don't think.
Yeah, it looks like the 19's going for like 70. So yeah, that's a relative deal.
If you get the Catena Zapata, the Bordeaux blend, that stuff is in the 90s these days. But anyway, let's talk about our one of our 3 highest bid getters. The other one of our 3 highest bid getters, the 2019 Domaine Laflave Macon Verzet Le Mans. 8 bids took it from 55 to 65.
Yeah, anything Domaine Laflave is gonna get some action. It's so sought after as a Burgundy producer in any of the wines now that are. And the Macon Verzet is. I'm not going to say it's not a sophisticated wine. I haven't tasted the 19, but it's not in the same tier as the Pouligny Folatier or Clairvoyant or something. So, but hey, it's $64. I mean, when Bourgogne Blanc is going for over 100, Macon Verzet is not far behind. So
yeah.
Next year.
I mean, I'm look, $65 for $65 for anything from Domaine Laflave. Like, I'm sure if you went to Domaine Laflave and got a keychain, it would be like north of $100, right? So this bottle of wine at 64 is not too bad. 2016 Tenuta San Guido.
This one's interesting. This one's interesting. Got bid up quite a bit, and there were multiple bottles. So
yeah,
I think now the 16 is probably long gone from retail, because you can find this wine at a lot of retail. I actually saw it in a grocery store not too long ago. And
I saw it was like
Costco. 60. Yeah. I think it was like 55 or 60 for the 19 or the 20. It's probably the 19 actually. But this is great wine. I think it's 45 looks like a real steal probably compared to what it's going for in general retail. So I think that's why I got pushed up to more typical range there at $60 a bottle.
Well, my guess is
it's good wine though. That's really, really good stuff.
My guess is you saw it like it probably like on release, it was released at about $45 a bottle, or $45 a bottle. And
yeah,
all the
16.
Yeah.
Like when the 16 came out, 18 or 19 or whatever, it was probably, you're right. It's probably under 50.
And that's probably weighting it down.
60.
And now it's pushing $60. I haven't
looked that's like smoking though. Cause even the Lady Fesse is, we used to talk about that all the time. We were drinking it, I think a lot.
Yeah.
It's probably been a year ago, but anyway, that the Guidalberto is a step up, in complexity from that and gets really good scores, and it's still way less than Sassicaia, so it's just, I think it's still a relative deal.
We've got the also sort of on the low end, started at $15.07. Hesperian Tom's Vineyard.
Hesperian Cabernet. Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought that was a steal too. I think we might have even mentioned.
We did mention this, and I mean, of course, it goes up. It's probably not surprising. It goes up. It's up to $26, right? But I mean, it just goes to show you that you can actually get some pretty darn good deals.
Yeah, and I'll bet this wine wasn't cheap to begin with. I mean, like on the mailing list or from the winery or what have you, because I don't know. I was kind of curious to look it up in Seller Tracker and see what what average value was for that, because it's
$45 is the community.
$5. Yeah.
So I mean, you're right. It wasn't. That's probably the wine club price. It wasn't cheap, and people are seeing that going like, hey, I enjoyed that. $15, even $26. It's still
not bad. Not bad for 10-year-old, 15-year-old.
16-year-old
Cabernet from Rutherford, from probably a pretty serious vineyard in Rutherford. So
it looks like they only needed 2007, 2008, and 2009 from Tom's Vineyard, and the 2009 shows a community value of like $71. So
yeah, so I'm sure it wasn't cheap.
It wasn't, unlikely it was cheap. 2014, Pierre Mayal, Corton Charlemagne. This, we had 2 bottles, 7 bids, took them from 85 to 140 a bottle. Woo!
Yeah, it's interesting. That's I mean, yet another producer I've actually never even heard of, but obviously others have, and any wines from this producer before. So anyway, that's a rare one, at least for us.
We had 2021 Williams Cellium, Russian River Valley Pinot Noir. 7 of those, 7 bids took from 50 to like $68 a piece. So a lot of action on Williams Cellium. Arajo Altagracia, 2012.
Actually, now the Cellium is interesting to note because a lot of the single vineyard wines from the mailing list are obviously very, very expensive. Not terrifically expensive, I don't believe, on the list. I should check. I actually get the emails from that. I've been a member for a while, but that's interesting to see that somebody's willing to pay almost $70 plus commission, on that wine. It can't. I mean, I can't imagine it's more than like $65 or $75 from the winery. It could be more, but that seems really high for the Russian River Valley designation. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of interesting to point out.
It looks like it's an interesting community value of about 66, 67.
Okay, so it's probably like 60, 65 on the mailing list, I would bet.
And then, even so, it's interesting that all of those ended up going with, because we had 7 of them. So there was a lot of people interested in 7 bottles, right? To really go after that. 2012 Arajo Altagracia, I believe we had.
That got really bid up.
It got really bid up. It went from 19 trackers, 6 bids, to from 65 to 94. And
65 seems crazy cheap for that wine.
Yeah, and I think we had the 2013 as well. We had one other vintage of that was going for like a little bit more, but everything I believe was getting bids like crazy. But the community average value on solid record of that bottle is like 115.
Yeah. I mean, it's still going to be. Also, the second label has always been considerably less at auction, but 65 reserve seems that's a steal. So it went for more than that, but it has sold actually in the past for, let's see, it has sold for somewhere around $60, $65 previously. So
we had this 2002 Ajli Aurier Brut Grand Cru Vitamine. I know I'm butchering that, and I'm sure you'll correct me. 6 bids took it from 315 to 435. So some pretty good movement there, actually.
Well, yeah, it's this. This Ajli Aurier has been just going up and up and up and up for the last few years, and the 02, that's a great vintage. I kind of wish there was a back label photo. I was curious as to the disgorgement date. I don't think it was listed in the description, but I believe this was released quite a few years ago. So it's not, it's not like a new release or even a recent release. that's a tough one to track down. I'm not too surprised. Amazing vintage, 02.
We had the 63 Inglenook Estate bottle Cabernet Sauvignon 6 bid ticket from 155 to 320.
Yeah.
I thought 155 for the 63 was a pretty pretty solid deal for that bottle.
Yeah. I mean, that's going back, you don't see too many wines before 68 or even 65. That's getting up there.
It is, and as you know, I have a bunch of Inglenook from back in the 60s, and it's still like a lot of it's still very good. And
oh yeah,
it's still extremely good. And it's a very different. It was a very different time period. They made wine very, very differently than we make wine today. In that, but anyway, I say that like I'm some sort of wine. I'm not a wine expert. Paul's the wine expert. I should let you comment on that stuff.
You're the wine investment. You're the wine investment expert.
Right. I'm really good at telling you things you should have invested in. And
you'd say something like, "You could have bought cases of this."
Exactly.
It's probably like $5.99 or something a bottle back then.
Yeah, exactly. If we have this 1980 Paradigm Oakville Cabernet Franc, started at 25, went to 40.
Yeah, $25. I mean, that's a Heidi Barrett wine. That's a steal. Even at $40, that's a good deal. That's a great. I love Paradigm, and it's always kind of underappreciated at auction. I mean, the Merlot was right below it for hammered. Started at 20 for the 96 and hammered at $36. I mean, for that territory, that neighborhood, those wines are always good deals. And the Merlot is fantastic. I don't think I've tasted the Franc except on release, but I don't think I've tasted mature bottles of it, not recently anyway. But the Merlot is great. It's awesome. And obviously the Cabernet is excellent and still not very expensive.
There was also a 1996 Paradigm Oakville Merlot, which started at 20 and hammered at 30.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about.
Right. And
paying attention to anything I was saying just now, Jeff?
No, you know what I was looking? I was sorry. I was looking at.
Yeah, what are you looking at? You're very distracted today. What are you looking at?
I was very distracted today. No, you know what's happening is like I was looking back at the Arajo Altagracia because we had the 2011 as well. So I bid on the 2011, 2012, and I was outbid on both of them. And while we were talking, because we had just been talking about those, and I was just like, God, I wish I would have put in a higher like max bid on those, because that's like absolutely ridiculously delicious stuff, right?
Well, if you really want it, that's what you got to do. That's a good reminder for bidders. Is you really want something, as we do every week, we review these recaps, and I'm surprised Jeff hasn't learned after doing this every week for almost a year, probably, that you've got to set a decent out of it if you want to secure something that is relatively rare, or if it seems like a really good deal.
Okay, but you know what I tell myself? I tell myself, like, you know what? I'm going to bid on all these things, and I'm sure I'm going to get outbid on a bunch of them, right? And so, so what ends up? Sorry, it'll be like 1 week. I'll be like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to bid on that much stuff, right? And I'll bid on like three or four things, and I win all of them, right? And then there'll be a week where I say to myself, like, I'm sure I'll get outbid on like half of these, or it'll be a situation where like I'll bid on 3 or 4 things and I get outbid on all of them. And so the next week I'll bid on 10 things and I get outbid on nothing, or I get outbid on like 9 out of 10. And so I don't know, it just sort of depends. So I'll tell myself, like, now I've got to the point where I say to myself, I'm going to bid on these knowing that if I lose it, it's okay, because there's always something that comes into auction that I want. But then the minute the auction closes, I'm like, damn it, I should have bid higher on that thing because I really wanted that.
Yeah.
Right? Like
that's what happens. That's what happens. That's why you've got to like either set it and forget it, or actually just do that anyway. Just set it, set a max bid you're comfortable with, and don't look at your phone. Don't get your outbid notification.
Yeah, this.
And you see, I was going to mention there's more Inglenooks down below. There's some 62s that got almost doubled in price.
Yeah, they went from 150 to 277 and 279. There was some other interesting things like this 74 Chateau Graysac, which had 5 bids, went from 20 to 41. I thought that was interesting. I mean, 1974. So you're talking, almost
rough Bordeaux vintage.
rough vintage, but I'm sure somebody's getting that as a birth year next year.
That's a cool bottle for sure. That's not, I mean, compared to California cabs, it's a lot more reasonable.
Yeah, for
Although there
sure.
were some interesting 74s in last week that, that weren't crazy like some of the big names.
Let's jump over really quickly to like heavy hitters, and let's take a look at some of the
Yeah,
big
sure.
models. Topping us out was, probably not surprisingly, a mag of 2014 Domaine Romani Conti Saint Vivant. First of all, a mag of Domaine Romani Conti. I mean, they produce mags a year, like a few hundred,
sure.
like
Yeah,
like two.
That's an awesome bottle for sure.
I mean, that's going to be an amazing
that's-
bottle, right? $6,000.
Yeah.
It actually had two bids, so there was action. Usually, you don't see action on stuff at these price points, but this one had two bids, taking from 5,500 to 6,000. We had three bottles of Latache of 2015 Latache, of which one sold for 5,415. Probably not surprising. Bottle of 2010 Skriegel, Screaming Eagle, that is, sold for 4,510.
Sauvignon Blanc specifies Sauvignon Blanc.
Sorry, Sauvignon Blanc. So yes, our perennial favorite, the Screaming Eagle Sauvignon Blanc, which sells for ridiculously high amounts because there are only like 3 bottles made a year. And or I think someone told us, like, is it 300 bottles, 300 cases? I don't know.
I think it's about 300. I mean, that's a good question. I don't know.
Oh, I thought this one was interesting. A bottle of 2000 Petrus in its original cardboard case. Petrus.
Well, this one came out of the Duclos collection, so that's why it's cardboard, because Duclos puts together these, like, I forget what they are. They're, it's not just a bunch of first growth, but I think there's a bottle of Decam in there. There's Cheval Blanc and Petrus and some other right bank wine, I believe. But they come individually boxed, and then they're inside like a really fancy wood box. So that's where it came from. If you look at the cardboard box, you can see the Duclos branding on there.
You did order, Duclos collection. Well, this one, two bids took it from 39.45 to 41.45, and then another heavy hitter with some action. 2013 Bernard Dugat-P Maz Chambertin Vidavine. 6-bottle lot. Two bids took it from 35.10 to 37.10. Just surprising to see so much action at this end, because you usually don't see this much competition on stuff at these prices, just because you don't have as many buyers, right? We had 2018 Armand Rousseau Chambertin Claude Bez went for 31.85, and then I'll just mention this Domaine Romani Conti Saint Vivant. 2016 went for 28.30, and then I'll pass it over to you. What am I missing? What are the ones you wanted to mention?
Yeah, no, there was a Bond 5-pack that, those things are not cheap anymore. They were relatively inexpensive, especially compared to mailing list price a few years back, but that's not the case anymore. But anyway, the 18 5-pack hammered at 26.55. I did want to mention, just kind of switching back to some of the things that we talked about last week, because there were a lot of really fascinating old California wines from a cellar. I remember talking about this, like Robert Pepe Vine Hill Ranch cab. I was like, oh, that's really, really cool. I went back to look this week to see if there's any left. And of course, they all got bought. And actually bid up quite a bit. Not too extreme, but 25 to 40 some odd dollars. And then there was a bottle of Cécile Tremblay Bourgogne Côte d'Or, it's called 205. Actually, 2 bottles of that 205 that got bid up to 270, which is really quite wild for Bourgogne. But Cécile Tremblay is no joke. And yeah, I was kind of scrolling down just to look and see what some of those other wines went for. There was a 78 Ridge York Creek Cabernet Merlot blend. I'm pretty sure we mentioned that also last week. It's 85 up to 130. Not too surprising there, considering any other, Ridge Cabernet based wines, especially Montebello, would be quite a bit more. That 86 Rombauer, well, I think they all sold right around $20. Actually, that's still a pretty good deal. And so anyway, it was it's fun to see a lot of really great old wines from from back in the days. Some producers obviously that don't even exist anymore, like this Robert Pepe wines, are no longer around. And I think there was like what was it, 76 Liberty School cab. I kind of wanted to see what happened there. Anyway, not in front of me right now. 91 Reyes got some action too, started at 320, got bid up to 400. Those are still on fire. It was a Fonsalette, I should specify. And yeah, so that's kind of it. I just kind of wanted to see what else was going on with some, all those great wines we were talking about. But that's what I got.
All right. And with that concludes our wine auction recap. Stay tuned this week for our picks for everything coming into auction. With Finally Hammered, this has been Jeff McGurn and Paul Walker wishing you happy bidding and cheers.
Cheers.